But I hope that gave you a bit of an idea on what is available out there. I saw the numbers as well there. So I'm going to ask Landiwe, maybe you must come back and Sindi to take questions that we might have. Remember, there's also Mentimeter. Is it still open? Can we use Mentimeter as well if there are questions perhaps that you feel you want to pose on Mentimeter? Okay, can I have, do you have a question? Okay, right in front.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much for the presentations. I think it's really encouraging to see the work that Sasol has done to ensure that your retailers or your business people are actually getting this information to actually expand and grow their businesses. So my name is Paulvia Mantata. I'm from the DMRE, used to be DMRE. All right, so my question, it's in terms of the franchise agreements. I think Sindi there can actually help us. It's just a note, basically, because of the number of service stations that we would normally deal with. And you'd find that when the time of the contract comes to an end, one does not want to, surrender the license, and it becomes a problem because that is very fundamental in terms of actually, issuing another license. We can't issue two licenses on one side. So it's very important that we get that back, or we invalidate it. So when we invalidate it, it's a process on its own. It might take, a year or two. So the site will be dry, and we are concerned as a regulator of the people that are employed at that particular service station. So it's just a comment to say, maybe on your agreements, maybe have a clause to indicate that the license it's surrendered to Sasol as well, so that when you appoint a new person or a new dealer, then at least it comes with an application. I think it will make your life easier. But I think in terms of just to get an indication of how the valuation of a business happen, especially if you have invested your business for 5 years, and then come 5 years, you have to leave. Do we make sure that the next person, the incoming, when they are going to be buying, say, a change of ownership business, is it going to be aligned with the value of that particular business? Doing the due diligence as you indicated to make sure that the service station is not overpriced or underpriced, and so on. And then the last question for me is just to find out from Sasol, in terms of your enterprise and supply development programs, do you actually require one to actually have a certain percentage to put in a business, or do you just give it to them to actually make sure that your transformation agenda improves? That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, I will answer some, and then I'll also just ask my colleagues to just assist. Just on the onset, in terms of surrendering of the licenses. So it's a very contentious subject, the surrendering of the licenses, because the franchise agreement have got provisions that talks to surrender of the license. And as we know, in terms of the PPA, a retailer, an exiting retailer, is required by law to surrender the license to the DMPR. That's the law. We do know that there are challenges that we experience when retailers have got to leave, where they refuse to surrender that license. And I think this is where we would like to collaborate better with the DMPR in terms of how do we navigate the space where we've got retailers that refuses to surrender retail licenses, and some of them have absconded. They've just abandoned the site, and they've left the site without surrendering the license to you as the DMRE or even to Sasol. So it's a very contentious subject, because some of them, they will say, I will not surrender this license until you give me something. And yet, we have given the retailer an agreement with a term, a specific term, 5 years or plus. So this is where I would say, us as well as the DMPR, we need to collaborate better to navigate around these issues where retailers refuse to surrender retail licenses. Or at times, you don't even know where they are because they've absconded, they've abandoned the sites. And this is where we then need what we call temporary license. Obviously, we've spoken about the process of invalidating an existing license, because you can't have 2 licenses that are existing at the same time. So then it becomes important then the collaboration between the oil company as well as the DMPR to accelerate the process of getting a temporary license as well as a permanent license in this regard. And then I'm just going to ask the two other questions, which is the valuation of the business, if my colleagues can just take that, and then also the ESD portion.
ESD, there's a mic at the back, so maybe we can get an answer for that one.
Good afternoon. Just on the ESD question around whether we require own contribution, we do not. We look at the cases case by case.
All right, thank you, ESD.
Overprice, underprice?
I think around the question of how do we value our businesses and how do we maybe protect the seller, because we do say willing buyer, willing seller, but at the same time, as part of our recruitment process, we do provide a guide to the seller. And in most cases, we would actually ask them to bring the price down if it becomes overpriced. And part of the recruitment interviews, it's part of those things that Sindi was talking about on due diligence. As the person who's applying for the business, it's also the onus on you to show the seller that the price that you are selling the business for, when I do the valuation, it doesn't make sense. So as much as on our side, we do meet them halfway to bring the price down, but it's also that due diligence that needs to be done. I did mention earlier on that there is a formula that can be utilized to actually do a quick calculation on how much high level should the business be costing.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to give it one more question, because I do note that it is past 3 and we're scheduled to finish at 3 o'clock, and there's still wrapping up that we need to do. Any more questions? Okay.
The franchise.
Hi, I'm Tamile Zwala from APSA. So I'm busy doing my slides for tomorrow. I see I've got 30 slides. So some of the questions here, I think I'll just shortcut it and just do it now. So in terms of value of the business, it's still willing buyer, willing seller. I know you'll ask me the question tomorrow. But the bank will not get involved there because there is a calculation. Then there is things called premium. So there are certain amounts that people believe that they need to get from the value. For us, as long as the numbers make sense, we'll be able to do the deal. Then from the C-stores and all these things that are covered there, we treat them differently. There is a price for the filling stations. If you are going to get a KFC, those are different franchise agreements. And we are guided by the franchisor. So if your franchisor wants 50% own contribution at your KFC or whatever, we'll be guided by those things. Then the Sasol part, we also treat it separately. Obviously, you are one person, but we'll work on the numbers there. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Landiwe. Thank you, Sindi. I
I
think.
think there was a question
Was there
on
a
the
question
Menti.
there?
Yes, just I think maybe
Okay.
we can answer that. It was around the franchise fee. Maybe I can just respond to it.
Okay.
I think the question was whether the franchise fee is a once-off fee, and the answer is simple. Franchise fee is once-off for the term that the oil company gives you. So if you've got 10 years, 5 plus 5 term, that's the franchise fee that you pay, which is 2.5 for a new to industry site. So it is a once-off fee. And then obviously there's monthly royalties that you would then pay to Sasol as the retailer, such as your 10% system turnover rental when you're operating a franchise A agreement.
Thank you. We have the last question here that Zanel is going to ask.
It's actually not a question, but I also want to indicate that we do have processes in place currently with regard to people who are refusing to surrender their licenses. So what the oil company, it's required to do, you need to provide us, it's either with a declaration or a letter to indicate that the retailer has abandoned the site, you cannot find the retailer. So we use that letter to do a cancellation of the license. We apply Regulation 29. So the process, we allow the new retailer to enter the space without delaying the process.
Thank you, Zan.